Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Kapindra from Kirorimal College, University of Delhi. Today we are going to discuss about a module Ecosystem Processes 2 Part 2 under paper Principle of Ecology. After studying this module, you shall be able to understand the term ecosystem, know different models of succession, understand changes involved in succession, learn the example of primary and secondary succession. The gradual change in species composition and processes of communities over time is known as ecological succession. The time required for succession to proceed varies with the nature of the climate and initial quality of the soil. The autotroph succession, hydrosphere and lithosphere heterotrophic succession causes major changes in the species composition and diversity during each succession. In addition to structural changes in succession, there are some functional changes. Succession is the temporal change in community structure. Odum in 1963 defined ecological succession by the following three parameters. The first is it is a systematic process in the development of community which is directional, as a result predictable too. Ecological succession occurs due to alteration of the abiotic factor of the environment caused by the community itself. In other words, succession is a process which is controlled by community and patterns are governed by physical environment. However, the degree of change in the community determines how far the development can go. It finally reaches into a stabilized ecosystem where maximum biomass and interaction between different living organisms are sustained per unit of energy flow in the ecosystem. Models of succession. Several models of succession have been proposed to accommodate different possible pathways of succession. The first model of succession was Facilitation Model. This model is based on the Climax idea of relay communities, in which the serial community is thought to modify the physical environment. According to this model, every new community which is formed in due course of time prepares suitable ground to facilitate the replacement of its own community by some other better adapted community. So, each community, like a relay process, delivers the new habitat to upcoming or highly adapted community. This model was not highly supported due to any proper evidence. The second model is Tolerance Model. Tolerance Model is based on the concept of initial floristic composition, which suggests that appearance of new species of higher life form does not necessarily eliminate the pioneer species. According to this model, the higher life form can easily adjust in the area without affecting the pioneer species and can be tolerated by the early settlers. So, the tolerance model differs from Clement's idea of relay succession model in the manner that as the succession proceeds, more and higher life form plants are tolerated to join and coexist, then necessarily swapping the earlier formed species. With due course of time, those species which can easily adjust with other communities gain control over the habitat and forms the climax vegetation. The third model is Inhibition Model. Inhibition Model states that the early arrived species on a new habitat may develop counter mechanism to normal replacement process. For example, the allelopathy may be the common counteracting adaptation to inhibit the entry of late arriving species. This type of early stage communities, which are highly adapted, may not be present collective on a wide range of habitats. In such case, relay succession can take the advantages to control only when allelopathic plants die. Examples of primary succession. First is xeroshare on rock. That is, first stage is pioneer stage. The bare ground conditions favor pioneer plant species. Pioneer species are often also opportunist species which are able to rapidly exploit a sudden new opening. Second stage is foliose lichen stage. They appear on the substratum partially built up by crustose lichens. These include foliose lichens like Dermatocarpon, Parmelia, etc., which occupy the crevices and depressions. Moss stage, when the sufficient amount of soil have accumulated, xerophytic mosses like black moss, hair moss, twisted moss begins to appear. Their rhizoids compete with lichens and their erect stem overshadows the foliage lichens. The mosses increase the amount of soil and by their death and decay, a thick mat is formed on the rocks, which can hold the large amount of water and make the habitat more suitable for the herbs. Most moss species are low-growing, carpeting the ground and with little height. As a result, many mosses are unable to successfully compete for space amongst taller, dense ground cover. This makes bare ground ideal for the establishment of a number of different moss species. These mosses then provide a microhabitat to a miniature forest for a variety of invertebrates like mites, spiders, insects, etc. Next stage is herbaceous stage. Pioneer mosses may grow into thick, cushiony carpets with great water holding capacity, which acts like sponges. These provide an ideal new environment for the germination and establishment of seeds of other competing plants. Also, more soil is accumulated due to extensive growth of mosses. The soil is now fit for germination of seeds of xerophytic herbs, first short-lived annual and later biennial and perennial grasses make their appearance. These seedlings eventually grow into tall, dark thickets which will shade out and displace the moss which enabled them to survive in the first place. Due to death and decay of these grassy plants, humus increases, evaporation and temperature also decreases and drought period is shortened. This condition favors the growth of shrubs. Next stage is shrub stage. It may start with the seeds which invades from adjacent area and the shrubs make the conditions unsuitable for herbs and overshadow them. Shades of shrubs also check evaporation from soil, wind movement is retarded, and humidity is also increased. All these conditions provide ideal habitat for the growth of tree seedlings. Not only plants, herbivores, invertebrates that feed on particular plant species also arrived to the area. The presence of the herbivores then attracts a range of carnivores, invertebrates to feed on them. A number of small mammals also appears in the area, which includes shrew and mice, which in turn attract various carnivore animals like owl, foxes. Because of large number of species of plants and animals in the area, the number of possible interactions between species greatly increased, with a staggering number of interactions going on between individuals, species, and the habitat itself. Each new community is better adapted to the changed environment than the previous community. Eventually, a final stage or climax is reached. At this point, the succession will not go any further. Next is climax forest stage. The first species of the trees are relatively xeric with stunted growth and are widely spaced. Slowly, more soil is formed and humidity also increases due to death and decay of plant species. Due to increase in amount of humus in the soil, the number of trees also increases. The xeric species may be replaced by mesophytic and may give rise to new herbaceous vegetation indicating more humid environment. Finally, the stage reaches into forest which becomes self-sustainable and interacts with biotic and abiotic component of the environment. It is called as climax community. With the development of forest, rich fauna develops consisting of invertebrates and vertebrates. These includes number of animals like arthropods, mollusks, reptiles, birds, etc. Hydrarch or hydrosaur. The first stage is pioneer stage. The pioneers mainly include the phytoplanktons consisting of algae, bacteria, and animals like amoeba, paramecium, and vorticella. Next stage is submerged stage. The gradual decrease in the water depth due to accumulation of large amount of sediment transported into the lake allow rooted submerged plant such as starwort and pond weed to grow. Floating stage with water depth decreasing to 6 to 8 feet, various types of rooted hydrophytes with large floating leaves on the water surface invade the area. The main plants are Nymphia, Castelia, which have broad leaves. The pond weeds include Potamogeton, Polygonum, and Echonornia. Some free floating plants like Pistia, Lemna, Wolfia become associated with the root plants. By their activities, again they make the pond shallower. The animals like hydra, frog, snails, salamanders, different larval forms also appears. Next stage is reed swamp stage. In reed swamp stage, the water become too shallow, and that is around 1 to 4 feet, to support fully submerged or floating plants. Instead, emergent plants such as iris, branched fir reed grow partially in and partially out of the water. These plants tend to have tall, flexible, spear-shaped leaves which allow the plant to cope with large fluctuations in water level. The main plants are Typha, Cirpus, Phragmites, Rumex, and Sagittaria. By their activities, these plants again make the habitat more suitable for the higher forms. The animal also appears, which include different nymphal stages of mayfly, dragonfly. Different insects are also found, like mud pickerel and bullheads. Birds like red-winged blackbirds, kingfishers, swamp sparrows, and ducks also appears. Mammals like beavers, muskrats may also be present. The water in the swamp area provides an ideal place for frogs to spawn. These areas provide a wonderful habitat for young amphibians. Tree seedlings such as willow under favorable wet soil conditions become well established and start growing. Willow has a very high transpiration rate, thus it transfers large amount of water from sediments into the atmosphere. The substratum at this stage is hardly covered with 1 to 2 inches of water, and the soil become marshy. Numerous species of sedges like Juncus, Carex, Alocaris, and fops like Mentha, Colha, and Campanula invade the habitat. They make the soil more suitable for the mesophytic and terrestrial plants. The next stage is woodland stage. Though the marsh dries but soil still remains wet, but no longer completely waterlogged. The willow dominates the ground and support a wide range of invertebrates, which in turn attracts large number of insect-eating birds, a variety of fungi which grow well in wet soils will also become established. In drier areas, increasingly aerobic decomposition will accelerate biogeochemical cycle, elevating humus and nutrient content of the soil. Another tree which flourishes in this wet condition is elder. The marsh plants are replaced by a variety of wood and flower plants including sedges, rushes, ferns and small flowering herbs which are adapted to low light levels and will flourish in wet conditions. It mainly consists of shrubs, trees and those which can tolerate water-logged soil around their root will be the pioneers. These plants react with the habitat by producing shade and decreasing the water table. Tree transpiration continues to dry this soil to the point where climax tree species like beech, oak can become established. Thus, the area once covered by deep water has now changed into forest, and the stages in the present horizontal sequence from shallow water to marginal forest become arranged in a vertical sequence as the bottom of the lake is built up, forest forming the top stratum. Climax species includes oak, ash and beech. They are slow growing, but because they are also tall and long lived, they will come to dominate the area. The presence of variety of plant species attract number of butterflies. A different range of fungi will inhabit the climax woodland. Rotting wood provides microhabitats for many different fungi and invertebrates. The living trees also act as host for a variety of fungi like fly agaric, which is associated with birch. Many mammals like squirrel, fox also arrived into the area. The diversity of the organisms increases in climax woodland community. Example of secondary succession. Secondary succession is usually much faster than primary succession because existence of seed bank of suitable plants in the soil, regeneration of previously existing plants from undisturbed root system in the soil, stumps and other plant parts, increase in the soil fertility as compared to barren land due to substantial modification by previous organisms, making it more suitable for growth and colonization. So, students, let us summarize what we have learned in this module. The gradual change in species composition and processes of communities over time is known as ecological succession. Understanding the process, rates and pattern of ecological succession is important for the management of ecosystem and for understanding vegetation potential and dynamic changes in the landscape. The time required for succession to proceed varies with the nature of the climate and initial quality of the soil. The stabilized community in the ecosystem development in the final phase is able to form equilibrium with the environment and results in climax community. Facilitation model of succession states that new community which is formed prepares suitable ground to replace its own by some other better adapted community. Tolerance model suggests that appearance of new higher form of species does not necessarily eliminate the pioneer species. Inhibition model, the early arrived species in a new habitat may develop counter mechanism to normal replacement process. Xeroshare share on rocks that start with barren rocks, then crustose lichens, then foliose lichen stage, then moss, then herbs, shrubs, and finally it reaches to the climax forest. Similarly, in the Hydra Stage, the succession begins with the fresh water, then planktonic stage, then submerged stage, then floating stage, marsh meadow stage, reed swamp stage, woodland stage, and finally again this hydrosphere succession reaches to the climax forest stage. Secondary succession, stable deciduous forest that enter into the forest fire, then forest uncompletely destroyed, and again the succession begins and then it reaches into grass stage, then herb, shrub, and again it finally reaches into climax stage, that is evergreen forest. Thank you.